Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we'd have a look at the rest of the airplanes which were suggested past the developers for October 2025. There's some pretty fun stuff here, including some interesting missiles and also some new nation stuff. So let's get into it, let's have a bit of fun, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Let's get started. So the first vehicle is for Sweden, and it is the JAS-39B. It's often said that in the 1990s, when the Gripen first entered operational service with the Swedish Air Force, the general belief was that a dedicated two-seat advanced trainer would not be required. At the time, flight simulators were evolving rapidly and were considered capable of handling the majority of training tasks that had previously demanded an actual aircraft. The assumption was therefore that simulators, together with the single-seat Gripen A, would provide more than enough training capability. Before long, however, SAAB realized that this approach had its shortcomings. No matter how advanced simulators became, they could never fully replicate the experience of flying the aircraft itself, particularly in complex or high-stress scenarios. In addition, for international customers, the lack of a two-seat version was incredibly seen as a disadvantage. This insight made it clear that a dedicated trainer was not only useful, but in fact essential. As a result, SAAB initiated the development of the twin-seat Gripen B. The Gripen B took to the skies for the first time in 1996, marking the beginning of its service life. Deliveries of the JAS-39B to the Swedish Defence Materiel Administration, or FMV, began in 1997. In total, only around 14 to 15 aircraft of this variant were produced, which makes it a relatively rare sight. Within the Swedish Air Force, these aircraft primarily served as advanced type conversion trainers, easing the transition for pilots moving onto the JAS-39 platform. They offered students the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the aircraft in a real cockpit environment, while still having the reassurance of an instructor seated behind or in front of them. Over the course of its service, the JAS-39B did not remain limited to training duties alone. Beyond its role as a type conversion platform, it also functioned as a standard multi-role fighter, capable of carrying out many of the same missions as its single-seat counterpart. It was even adapted for certain specialized tasks, which demonstrated its flexibility within the Swedish Air Force's inventory. Although the JAS-39B was by definition a trainer, it was far from being a lesser aircraft. In terms of performance, it could carry out nearly the same missions as the A with only minor differences. The two-seat configuration naturally made the aircraft somewhat heavier and also slightly larger, but this had little impact on its overall capability. In practice, the Gripen B remained fully combat capable and was used by the Swedish Air Force both for training and operational missions. The JAS-39B has today largely disappeared from active frontline services within the Swedish Air Force. The exact fate of the Bs remain largely unknown. As newer two-seat variants such as the JAS-39D and also later the Gripen F became available, the older B models were gradually retired and put into storage, used for new experimental projects or even for spare parts. Some aircraft had been placed in storage or used for ground training purposes, while a few have found their way into museums and static displays. In Swedish service, the B was essentially phased out by the mid-2000s, as the fleet transitioned to the more modern CD versions. Additionally, some sources say that two of the Gripen Bs got converted to JAS-39Ds and then sold to the Thai Air Force. For Israel, we have the Rafael I-Derby. The project for the Derby began in the 1980s, with the development efforts gaining momentum after South Africa provided funding and joined the program. By the 1990s, the Derby had undergone extensive flight testing, including trials on Israeli F-16 fighters. The missile was officially acknowledged in 1998. The reports suggest it had been in development for at least a decade before its public reveal. Rafael sought to create an alternative to export BVR missiles. By integrating fire-and-forget technology and also active radar technology inside of it, the missile was made. While the Derby was inspired from the Python 4, it didn't use as much tech from it as rumors claim. The Derby became operational in the early 2000s and was later exported to multiple countries, including Brazil, India, and Chile, where it was integrated into various fighter platforms and also air defense systems. During Aero India 2015, a new missile was shown, which was the I-Derby. The improvement of it was its seeker, which had improved countermeasure resistance, including better ECCM and also computing systems. On the same year, Rafael also said that an extended range version was planned, which was the I-Derby ER. The ER variant was displayed a few years later and also mounted on other aircraft. From what we can see, the visual difference between both missiles is that the I-Derby is grey, whereas the ER is light blue. We also have a vehicle for Thailand, the RTAF SWDC RTAF-5. Following the Second World War, the Royal Thai Air Force mostly relied on foreign-designed aircraft. However, having a not insignificant history of local production and even development of their own aircraft, such as the Paribatra bomber and also the Praj Had-Hipok fighter, they once again sought to build up their aviation industry. Starting in 1957 with the RTAF-2, a domestic development of the Fuji LM-1, Thailand would begin their endeavour. And in 1972, the RTAF-4, based on the de Havilland Canada DHC-1, would be their first Thai post-war design to enter service with the Royal Thai Air Force. Design on the RTAF-5 started in February of 1975, and the first prototypes started production not long after, in either May or August of 76, and the first aircraft completed its first flight in October 1984. With the landing gear fixed in a down position. The retraction mechanism for the landing gear, along with other changes, was said to be implemented following the second test flight in December of the same year. The second aircraft was used for static testing on the ground, and the project was then cancelled as Chief Test Pilot Wing Commander Soon Thorn Wong Namsam died in a crash. It's likely the aircraft involved was the RTAF-5 prototype, rendering it destroyed. It's also possible a second prototype was started construction at an unknown date, however not much is really known about it. Currently, the RTAF-5 can be found in the Royal Thai Air Force Museum in Bangkok, and interestingly, this aircraft features a static landing gear, which would either mean that the planned modifications of the prototype never were implemented, or that it's the static test aircraft, confirming the destruction of the prototype. The RTAF-5 was a cantilever mid-wing monoplane design with a twin-boom tail section. It was powered by a single Allison 250 B-17C turboprop engine mounted at the rear of the fuselage in a pusher configuration. The wings each had two hardpoints of weaponry, an inner one with 150-pound capacity and an outer one with 100 pound. This would give the aircraft a total ordnance capacity of 500 pounds. The landing gear was a tricycle configuration with a single nose wheel and also twin wheels in the rear. In the intended design, the front wheel would fold up forward into the nose, where it would be partially exposed. The rear landing gear would fold up into gear compartments in the front section of it as well. So the vehicle, unfortunately, didn't have a storied history. It was basically a one-off prototype that ended up crashing. This vehicle also had no guns. It had access to the 100-pound A&M-30 GP bomb, maybe some FFAR Mighty Mouse rockets, and also HFAR rockets, where it could carry one on each inner hardpoint, giving it 2 HFAR rockets in total. When it came to the FFAR Mighty Mouse rockets, it could carry 8 of them in total. So this vehicle would either have 4 100-pound bombs, 8 Mighty Mouse rockets, or 2 HFAR rockets. An absolute powerhouse of a design, being able to go 333 kilometers an hour. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.